Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Florencia Valdi. Welcome to the fourth event of the Science-Based Tools for Financial Institutions series from FC4S. I am here on behalf of FC4S, the Financial Centers for Sustainability Network, which belongs to the United Nations Development Programme Sustainable Finance Hub. And we're a network of 39 financial centers globally working to advance sustainable finance in order to accomplish the Paris Agreement goals and the Sustainable Development Goals. We currently comprise 39 financial centers globally, representing 82% of the global equity market and over $84 trillion equity market capitalization. The objective of FC4S is to accelerate the expansion of sustainable finance by enabling financial centers to evaluate themselves regarding sustainable finance, to provide tools and insights to engage their local financial institutions and to inform policy and ultimately accelerate market transformation. At FC4S, we believe it is essential to promote spaces like this where accomplishing the Paris Agreement goal is a focus and where we can support the collective commitment to build a more resilient global economy. So this series of webinars are presenting available instruments that have proven significant contributions to help financial institutions and the broader financial system, including even governments, to align their financial flows with relevant climate and sustainability goals. Today's session, we are honored with the participation of Unep-Fi, the United Nations Environmental Programme Finance Initiative, which catalyzes action across the financial system to align economies and with sustainable development. Unep-Fi was founded in 1992, and it was the first organization to engage the finance sector on sustainability. Today, it advances sustainable market practices within more than 400 financial institutions with assets over $80 trillion, and it's headquartered in over 85 countries. It also supports the implementation of global programs in all continents of the world. And it basically convenes financial institutions to apply industry frameworks on a voluntary basis and develop practical guidance and tools to position their businesses for the transition to a sustainable global economy. Some well-known frameworks which have been developed or co-developed by Unep-Fi are the principles for responsible investment, the principles for sustainable insurance, the principles for responsible banking. And in addition to that, Unep-Fi convenes 3 net zero alliances with key stakeholders, namely the Net Zero Asset Owners Alliance, the Net Zero Banking Alliance, and the Net Zero Insurance Alliance, which together let's say, join forces and establish the Global Financial Alliance for Net Zero. Today's presentation will be led by the Unep-Fi team, and it will be followed by a Q&A panel. We really want you to participate, so we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat box during the session, and later raise your hand or type your question so that we can turn this session interactive. Without further ado, I want to introduce you to our speakers, Karine Ab, who is the program lead at the Sdgs and Impact of Unep-Fi, which is focused on closing the financing gap, the SDG financing gap. Karine managed the process leading to the principles for positive impact, and she also led on the Rethinking impact to finance the SDGs, which is Unep-Fi's unique theory of change. She has then managed the development of a holistic impact management methodology, leading to the release of this suite of tools that we're going to present today. And Karine is responsible for managing Unep-Fi's involvement in the impact management platform currently, of which she is currently the chair. And her current focus, top 17 years, at Unep-Fi, during which she also helped develop and expand sustainable finance agenda in emerging markets. My other co-panelist here is Constanza Guerra, who works on the same team, on the SDGs and Impact team, at Unep-Fi, but she's a content manager, and she focused on the development of the Unep-Fi holistic impact analysis tools, which, as we will see, enable banks, investors, and their corporate clients and investee companies to implement this holistic approach to impact analysis and management. She also closely supports Unep-Fi members with implementation of their impact analysis through workshops, group sessions, and bilateral discussions. So without further ado, Constanza and Karim, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Florencia, for having us and for the very kind introductions. And good morning, good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. We have some slides to support our presentation to you today, so allow me to put that up. Hopefully, can I just get a confirmation that that's coming through okay? Brilliant, thank you.
Yes.
So we're very pleased to be here today to give you some insights into a set of resources, a set of tools that we have developed for financial institutions to do their impact management, basically with a specific view towards SDG alignment and to reducing that SDG funding gap. There's a suite of tools, as you will see, and so we'll walk you through these. What we'd like to do is maybe first off give you a little bit of background and context on the methodology that underpins all of these resources, and then what we'll do is actually present the tools. What we'll do is to actually demo one of the tools, so we'll move away from the PowerPoint presentation and go into one of the tools directly. It's a little bit short to try and do that for 4 tools. So for the others, which are built on the same methodology, we'll just give you a quick heads up on the specificities relative to the first one. But hopefully the demo will give you a good idea. And of course, looking forward to a rich exchange with you after that. So a bit of background and context. We thought it might be helpful first off to clarify the level at which our work places itself, because promoting sustainable finance or SDG finance, there are so many angles through which you can tackle that and so many levels at which you can tackle that. And so just so that upfront you understand where exactly we're positioning ourselves in the ecosystem, as it were. So to really just try and simplify, and please forgive us for doing that, but hopefully it does help to clarify. If we're looking at the finance sector and the players within that, so directly financial institutions, and we understand that to be banks, insurers, and investment firms, Unep-Fi really tries to speak collectively to those audiences. Florencia already gave a taste for that. Beneath that, if we sort of simplify again and say that some of the main actions that financial institutions can take to try and promote the SDGs and to get private finance moving towards the SDGs, but here very high level categories, all the way from managing portfolio composition to engaging with individual clients or investees to policies and processes that cut across. And so if we, a lot of work can happen at a very granular level to all sorts of aspects within this, whether it's really trying to build a pipeline of projects or of companies that could tilt portfolio composition towards positive sectors. It might be developing specific tailored products and services, such as sustainability-linked loans or an impact investment fund, policies and processes trying to include things like human rights into due diligence or KYC. So the level at which Unep-Fi's work and which the tools that we're about to present operates is really trying to give, let's say, a cross-cutting view across these 3 areas. So what we're trying to provide is effectively a series of management tools that can help really embed sustainability and SDG alignment across the business strategy. we have a specific framework through which to do that. And I'll just move on here to the next slide and take the example of specifically the banking sector, which are these industry frameworks. And again, Florencia mentioned those. And so in the Principles for Responsible Banking, we have specifically integrated a requirement that impact analysis, impact management, and specific target setting against sustainability topics and in line with the SDGs and with other specific policy frameworks like the Paris Agreements be a part of their process. And what you're seeing at the bottom, these are, we basically require our members over a 4-year period to have achieved 3 key steps. One of them is analyzing their portfolio, against that analysis to set and implement targets, and then to report on that. And so what we're going to be presenting to you today are basically the methodologies and tools that we have developed to enable this part here, which is understanding the bank portfolio, identifying significant impact areas, and then the assessment of current practice and performance to set appropriate targets. So much for context setting. Let me just speak to the methodology. So you already saw that in the requirements that we have, for instance, for our banks, where we distinguish, the identification process of significant impact areas. That's really step 1 of our process. What's important to note is that this is grounded in a two very specific things. 1, understanding what is actually the content of current portfolios. So what are the types of clients, what are the types of sectors that one is financing, as these are the drivers of impact inside a portfolio. And the other thing we ask is an understanding of context. So where is specifically that portfolio situated, and what are the relative country or local needs relative to the SDGs, so that when we say, as a financial institution, I'm going to prioritize topic, A, B, or C, or SDG 5, 6, or 7, that is done based on really the reality of the portfolio and a contextualization of what's inside, so that we're really addressing, what we're able to act on, basically relative to the needs. The second part is assessment, where once that has been identified, we actually go a lot deeper into the most significant impact areas to understand the current level of performance relative to specific thresholds, relative to specific policy priorities and objectives, so that the targets can be set accordingly. And that's what you'll see in the final box, where we're talking about, setting targets, establishing action plans and strategies. So that's our logic. I have just a couple more slides before I hand over to Costanza to give you a walkthrough demo of one of our tools, which is just explain a little bit more about now how the resources and the tools are constructed. So what we'll be giving you a demo of is the actual tools. But what's important to understand is how really these are constructed. And so while these tools are workflows where financial institutions can input their portfolio data, what then makes them operational is the fact that there's a series of inbuilt resources that enable a series of results, of data visualizations that will help the institution to do their analysis and to set up their management frameworks. And so the inbuilt resources are twofold, and take this a little bit like, almost a series of layers or building blocks. First of all is just the, let's say the framework or the set of sustainability topics that we're going to use. So we know that the SDGs is obviously our objective. In terms of doing a portfolio analysis, we did have a need when it came to analysis and applying this to portfolios to translate the SDGs into discrete topics and areas that we could map to the portfolio. So you'll find all of the SDGs in this impact radar, and you can see the social elements, the socioeconomic elements, and the environmental elements here. However, as said, expressed in a way that we can use for actual portfolio analysis. Linked to that is then a series of mappings where we understand how different sectors using standard industry classifications attach themselves to these different topics. What are the positive associations? What are the negative associations to each of these topics for every single sector and activity area? So those are the things that have been mapped out and that are integrated directly into the workflows to make them function. And a final point now, more in terms of the development process and where this has all come from. So we've explained already that obviously we have the fact that the Unep-Fi network is committed to actually doing this through the Principles for Responsible Banking. But in terms of then how this was actually done, this has been an effort in co-construction. So I think it's really a good illustration of the public-private partnership almost that we have at Unep-Fi, where we have the UN through its secretariat imposing a level of ambition, which are the SDGs and which are the Paris agreements, and developing a methodology that is holistic, that looks across the 3 pillars, that looks at both positive and negative impact areas, and then making that practically feasible for an audience of mainstream finance through an effort of co-construction. So basically what we do is, we develop these materials, and as we produce them, we basically check them and we progress them with our membership so that we can get their input in terms of the practicality of how to do things, which doesn't mean we lower the level of ambition. We just work on usability and practicability of the actual resource. That happens through working groups. It happens through the fact that we get a lot of then user feedback from the members once the tools are out. We also work very closely with our peer organizations, so other sustainability initiatives, where we're trying to really align some of the the key concepts, key terminology, so that there can be interoperability between and complementarity between the different frameworks. But I think we can come back to that also in the Q&A session. And in that same vein, we engage a lot of organizations also on on the resources such as the mappings, so the likes of, for instance, a MacArthur when it comes to circularity and resource efficiency, or a Shift and the UNGPs when it comes to the human rights aspects. So that's kind of the style of creation. As a result of that, it also means that we are regularly iterating. So whatever you see now, we will continue to build on that and to further develop that based on an ongoing conversation with all of these stakeholders. And so you can see that the tools have been iterated, some of them a number of times, in particular the one that we will be presenting to you today, which is the one for banking portfolios. But with that, I think enough background. I'm sure what you want to see is the actual resource. So I'll stop here and hand over to Costanza.
Thank you very much, Karine, and hello everyone. So in the next slides, as Karine mentioned, we'll go through the tools in a little bit more detail. More specifically, we'll go inside the actual tool, so the actual Excel file with regard to the bank portfolio tool. So one of the two bottom-up tools that we already mentioned before. And with regard to the other one, we'll be just giving the main detail and explain them how they are structured directly in the presentation. So what it's important to note here is that the methodology that we are applying is always the same. So it's the Unep-Fi holistic impact analysis methodology, which then is tailored based on the different object of analysis. So depending on what we are talking about, for example, is it a portfolio, is it a real estate asset, is it a company, for example? So what are the different elements that we are taking into account? What are the different impact drivers? And as a consequence, we tailored this, and the data visualization, the type of input that it's provided and it's asked inside the tool is slightly different. So we'll start off with the portfolio impact analysis tool for banks. In the next slide, we just wanted to provide a little bit of background in terms of how it is built. So just this week, so 2 days ago, we released the third version of the portfolio impact analysis tool for banks, which, differently from the previous version, it is a modular tool. So instead of being constructed just in one Excel file, as it is also the case for the other tools for the moment, it is organized in different modules, and each module would cover a different phase of the impact analysis process. So here on the slide, we are showing the main phases of the impact analysis. So we have impact identification first and impact assessment. And within each of that, we have different subsections, let's say. So what we are focusing now, so what we'll be presenting now is the modules that relate to the impact identification phase. And as you can see, we have 3 models that have been released 2 days ago. One is the context model, which is the one that enables the banks to perform the needs assessment of the geographies in which they operate. And then in the second box, we have the other 2 models, which are called identification models. And there is one for consumer banking and one for institutional banking, which is an umbrella term that we use to refer to business, corporate banking, and investment banking. So we mainly differentiate the 2 models based on the type of client that the bank may have. On one hand, individuals covered in the consumer banking model, and on the other hand, organization, either SMEs or big corporates, which are covered in the institutional banking. So let's say these 2 sets of models together would enable then the bank to perform the identification phase of the impact analysis. So I would like now to actually go inside the file and show you the bits that was circled in red, which is the institutional banking identification model, to give you a sense of how these tools are constructed and what are the different types of data visualization that you see inside the file. So I'm going to share the file now, and I think now you can see that. So I would like, first of all, to start explaining what we have in front of us in terms of the actual tool. As you can see, is an Excel file. So this is the way we built this tool, and the way the reason why we are choosing Excel is just to be transparent, and because inside the Excel file, everything is just like all the calculation, everything is just provided in the file itself. So it's transparent what is the methodology that we're using, and we know that all the institutions are using inside their system Excel as one of the main programs. So this would enable like the integration of this methodology and the impact analysis that they perform directly with their internal system. So this is the first point that I wanted to highlight. Then the way this tool works is that they are input-output workflow. So they require the user to input information on their, for example, in this case, we're talking about the banking tool. So they input information on the content of their portfolios. And then based on the actual mappings that Karin explained before, so the main resources that are embedded in the tool, for example, the sector to impact map, the indicator library, for example, all these mappings together with the data input from the user would enable the tool to generate actual outputs, so visualization. And the visualization that we're going to show now are those pertaining to the impact identification phase. So meaning, for example, what are the most significant positive and negative impacts that are associated with the bank portfolios, for example, and which areas are the most prominent ones. So this is just to give you a high-level overview of the tool itself. Now let's go into some more detail of the actual institutional banking model that I'm projecting here right now. As you can see at the bottom, there are many different worksheets. Some of them are in white, and those are just introductory or reference worksheets. And then in green, we have the bulk of, let's say, the model itself, in this case, the institutional banking model. The flow starts with a parameter section where, in this case, the banks can set the parameters of the analysis, for example, to decide what is the business line that it's covered in this model. Is it the business banking, corporate banking, investment banking, or perhaps a combination of business and corporate banking, depending on how the data, how the bank is structured, and what is the type of organization that they have internally, and how also they collect their data. And then other parameters are, for example, the indicators that they want to use in their analysis, as well as any industry classification that would like to adopt, for example, to choose for the actual sector selection, which is one of the main parts of the analysis. When what it's asking inside the tool at some point is precisely which are the sectors, the main sectors that the bank finance. So the parameter section is like a starting point to define the main parameters of the analysis. But then the main part is actually contained in the portfolio composition and in the profile. The portfolio composition is the place for data input, the main data input. And this is organized country by country, because the analysis it's always performed country by country, and then there is an aggregation across all the countries that are potentially covered by the bank in the impact analysis. And what we ask here is main information concerning the content of the portfolio. So what are the types of clients of the bank? And in particular, we have a specific focus on SMEs. And then what are the sectors that are financed? And in this regard, like the type of data that it's required, it's very straightforward. So what is, for example, the exposure for each specific set? So first of all, which are the main sectors that the bank finance, and then what is the corresponding exposure? And as you can see here, we have included a number of also interoperability features, for example, the EU taxonomy here, to enable the banks also to prioritize sectors to be included in the analysis based, for example, on sectors that are eligible under the EU taxonomy. Or other interoperability features have also been included in the profile, and I will show you in a moment. So this is the place where the data is inputted. And we've also allowed for a differentiation between general purpose products and dedicated products. This is something that it's optional, because we know that in some cases not easy to collect data in this way. So this is an optional feature, but this is broadly what it's asked in the portfolio composition part. Then once this data is collected and compiled in this worksheet, then a number of data visualization are produced here in the profile. So the profile is the place where there is, let's say, a combination of what has been inputted by the user and what the mappings actually say in terms of the main associations that are there between a given sector or the sustainability topics that Corinne was mentioning before, using the impact radar categorization. And what you see, what we displayed here in the profile are a different set of visualization. Some of them are more general and some of them are more granular. This is something that it's very flexible. So depending on what the bank is actually interested in looking at, more at the granular level or the general level, can decide what like the specific visualization to focus on. So for example, here, this is the high level visualization of the main positive and negative impact associations on the different impact areas of the Unep-Fi radar. So the impact areas are the broader categories, the broader sustainability topics that cut across the three pillars, so social, socioeconomic, and environmental. And here the banks can actually see the main impact association, which of them are considered to be particularly strong. And this is these are the key association, the way we call them inside the tool. And then also to contextualize this association based on the needs of the geography that the bank is analyzing in this profile, for example. So that's the information on the impacts driven by the sectors that are financed, plus the actual needs in the country in which the bank operates can be combined together. And this would give to the bank the full picture of what issues are more relevant, which areas are considered to be most significant. Perhaps because they have a negative impact on a specific sustainability issue, but at the same time, I know that there is a high need with regard to that issue in that specific geography. So this is something that I should prioritize. And there is an urgency for me to set targets and to mitigate, for example, that negative impact. So this is the kind of logic behind this visualization. And then same information, it's also displayed lower down in a more detailed way, meaning that you don't have simply the benefit of seeing which are the most significant impacts, but what is driving those impacts, so what is behind. And here, for example, you see the associations that are between the different sectors, for example, that you finance in one country, and the different sustainability topics that we mentioned before. So our impact topics and our impact areas. And this information is displayed in a form of a heat map. So you can see for each sector that it's displayed here, this is precisely the list of sectors that the banks would include in the portfolio composition. For each of these sectors, they can see where there is an impact, either a positive or a negative. and whether this impact is considered to be particularly strong or not. So in this case, we refer to key association. So the blue would represent the positive impact association, the orange would represent the negative impact associations, and the darker blue and orange would represent those associations that are considered to be key, so particularly strong. And this table can be tailored in the sense that the user can decide to filter just one sector, to focus on that, understand the impacts just on one sector, or they want maybe to see this information through the lens of one specific impact topic and see, okay, I see that I have a lot of potential positive impact or negative impact on health and safety, but I want to understand which sectors behind drive this impact. So they can use this filter to just streamline the table and understand which of these sectors are, for example, key to health and safety. And then there is another type of visualization, which are this table here. There is one table for the positive associations and one for the negative associations. The idea here is to combine again all the main information that are relevant for the identification of significant impact areas just in one place all together. And in this case, for example, what we see are any areas that are considered to be significant based on how much of the portfolio is associated with that area. So what is the actual proportion that you can see, for example, here. And then you can see also if an impact area is also a priority in the country or it's driven by key sectors. So this all information that we are, for example, embedding through a color code system here. And finally, for each impact area, you can also see what are the associated impacts, positive and negative. And this is something that it's very crucial because given the nature of the approach that we are just explaining, the fact that it's holistic, that it takes into account all the sustainability pillars, all the topics, the positive and the negative associations, and we want to show that all the sustainability topics are interconnected. This is very relevant because you can see not only what it's immediately, let's say, significant based on what it's driven by the sectors that you finance and by the priority of the country, but you can also see what additional impacts, either positive or negative, you may have in case you address one of those impact areas. So this is the way those associated impacts should be read. So for example, here I have health and safety as one of my significant impact areas based on my sectors, based on the types of clients I have in the country, and based on the priorities and the needs in the country. But I also know if what happens if I address health and safety as an impact area. So I try to mitigate my negative impact on the health and safety, what additional positive impacts I can drive, or at the same time, what additional negative impacts, which unintended consequences also I may drive. So these are the kind of information that are included in here. And finally, this, like the landing point of this identification is the actual prioritization of areas. So as you can see, there are many areas that can be considered significant. So it's very important at some point to prioritize and to understand what it's important to address first based on all the information that we just explained. So this is the place where the bank can prioritize the significant impact areas, and based on this prioritization, the bank can see also the associated SDGs. So which SDGs mapped to these impact areas that have been prioritized. So this is another interoperability feature that we are including throughout all the tools. So we always refer back to the SDGs. So each impact area is always mapped back to the corresponding SDGs. And so that we know that this is something that it's very relevant, especially for reporting purposes. So I hope that was helpful. And this is, as I mentioned, just to give a little bit of a closer sense of how like these tools are built. The same logic, same methodology is applied to all the other tools. So the investment portfolio, the real estate, and the corporate tool. Right now, they are not built in modules. So there is just one Excel file for each of these tools, but we'll be moving to modular format also for the others as well. And in the slide deck, we have also provided some information, additional information on the other tool as well. So I will just stop sharing for now and hand back.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Constanza and Karine, for a very clear and complete explanation of the tools, the set of tools and this in particular. Some questions have come up. So the first one, I read it out loud and maybe complete it. Philippe asked whether this tool is linked to positive impact finance of Unep-Fi. And in that sense, maybe I could add like, how does your methodology or potentially overlap or complement with other existing, for example, climate alignment methodologies? And whether do you think it's any risk to duplicate the, let's say, methodologies, or how do they complement themselves?
Thank you, Florencia, and thanks, Philippe, for the question. So yes, indeed, positive impact initiative is where this methodology came from. However, as things happen in institutions, there's a little bit of a evolution over time, and so the positive impact initiative is what we set up when Unep-Fi started to really dig deep into impact and started to weave this into our work stream. We, however, got to a point where, rather than having that as, let's say, a smaller coalition of the willing within Unep-Fi's membership, we were able to really push it into the mainstream frameworks, as it were. So the Principles for Responsible Banking has 290 members and is almost 50% of global assets in banking. And so since we've been able to integrate the requirements for impact analysis and target setting directly there, we don't, we refer to the positive impact initiative, but in slightly historic terms, since we've sort of mainstreamed the work. So we obviously still have the team here pushing, and developing the methodology and developing the resources, but we've sort of just mainstreamed it into the, the bigger frameworks of Unep-Fi, rather than having it as something separate on the side. And then to the question on climate initiatives, Florencia, I think that would be fairly straightforward. As the name suggests, it's a holistic impact methodology, and we're really trying to drive a holistic approach across the SDGs and across the 3 pillars. And if you want to, kind of read about the kind of the theory of change behind that, do have a look at our thought piece of that, which is really the foundational part, which is called Rethinking Impact to Finance the SDGs. But basically our worldview on this is that really to be able to fully address any of the SDGs or any of the topics, we are going to need to manage and understand the interlinkages, and hence the notion of taking a holistic approach where we understand the associations to the different impact areas and the interlinkages. And Constanza gave you a bit of a feel for that earlier on when she was pointing to some of the visualizations inside the tool. So here it's not so much us trying to bring one more climate methodology to measure GHGs. That's not what this tool does. What it will enable you to do is to plug the results of some of those specific measurement methodologies into a broader framework that gives you a cross-cutting view. So that is a complementarity that we're looking for here.
Thank you, Karim. That was really clear and informative. I'll move on to another question regarding what are the links with double materiality and additionality. And well, if I may, whether is this tool dedicated to specific banking products or not?
Thanks, Florencia. So maybe to take that last point first. So as per that very first slide where we tried to, as said, very much a simplification of, what are the different main areas that a financial institution can act on? What are the main actions they can take for sustainability? Obviously, the interactions with clients, and as part of that, the specific products and services that they might tailor is one aspect. This tool is not made for, let's say, an individual product development or to look at one individual product. It is meant to act for the whole portfolio. So it's really the financial institution as a whole that we're trying to move. It's their whole business strategy, their whole approach. So whether it's indeed understanding, okay, well, based on the needs in different areas and based on my current portfolio composition, I really need to think much more closely about what can I do to tailor my consumer banking products to this particular underserved population, or I really need to, derive some sustainability linked loans for this sector because they are absolutely critical in terms of climate change or in terms of biodiversity protection. So it's the overall management tool that will enable you then to take targeted action, but it's not meant to be a fund construction product, as it were, or tool, as it were. On materiality and additionality, I think it was the question. So those are really important as well, of course. So first of all, as you might have noticed, this really is an impact tool. So we're working back from impact. We're not posing the question of, maybe this is financially material, maybe this is not financially material. From our perspective, everything is interconnected. And so it can be a little bit artificial to try and say, well, this one is going to be financially material, this one not. Maybe today, yes, maybe tomorrow, no. You don't know when it's going to be. And so, and again, you need to manage the interlinkages to be able to advance, sustainability topics, but also from a pure enterprise value protection and enterprise value development perspective. And so we are taking that perspective of, I need to understand my impact profile and I need to manage my impact as part of that. So where, if we want to use the double materiality thing, even though, as you can see, we'd rather think of it as one big materiality, we are taking that broader spectrum. We're not going on a narrow spectrum of, what is potentially just financially material. And I think there was a point on additionality, Florencia. So the tool here is not going to be aimed at trying to calculate the level of additionality. I think this is a concept, of course, that's very, very important in impact investing. Here, as said, we're not looking at individual funds or individual products. And also, very importantly, what we're trying to do is really take this into mainstream finance. And so as a result, I think the notion of additionality becomes, obviously, is still relevant, but is less what we're trying to do. We're more about trying to shift the whole portfolio and say, well, okay, maybe you're going to be able to put certain positive things into your portfolio, remove certain negatives, but the bulk of it is going to be somewhere in the middle, and it's going to be about working with your clients, working with your investee companies to transition to different ways of doing things, finding new business models, etc., etc. And so that is more the focus than in trying to get into all the calculations around additionality. Is perhaps a little bit less front and center for what we're doing.
Perfect. That was really clarifying too. So now maybe taking the opportunity of to connect maybe the question and your answer, and given the fact that you're the chair of the IMP project, maybe can you briefly explain whether there's like a relation with the IMP approach and its dimensions, please? Okay.
Thanks. I might just need to offer a point of clarification, and which is the acronym IMP. There's been a bit of an evolution. So indeed, Impact Management Project was, of course, the author and the developer of the 5 dimensions of impact. And the project, however, was time-bound, and it sunsetted at the end of last year. The acronym IMP is still present, however, because one of the things that the IMP was doing, apart from developing those norms, was also to facilitate a network of sustainability initiatives, the main kind of norm builders, to try and drive convergence and consensus and interoperability between them. At the time, that was called a structured network. And so you had UNDP, Unep-Fi, Global Compact, GRI, CDP, GIN, all of these players around the table. IMP sunsetted, but we thought as a structured network that this work really needed to continue, that we had only just scratched the surface. And so the acronym is kept, but we're now the impact management platform, and it is specifically this structured network aspect that is continued. The 5 dimensions of impact, the ABC, all of these items are now hosted by Impact Frontiers. And so you will see all of that material there. But let me also just answer the question in terms of the, the link to the 5 dimensions. So what we presented, what Costanza showed you in terms of the module that was there, remember that was identification. And so at the identification stage, we are not yet getting into impact measurement. So we are literally looking at portfolio composition, needs, how the two overlay, understanding key sectors, etc., etc. It's once we've consolidated our understanding of different portfolios, business lines within the bank, we deep dive on those, and that's when we're going to look at performance. And so at that point, indeed, one could use the 5 dimensions to look at, at the impact performance more closely. Having said that, some of those dimensions are possibly better suited to a specific impact investing scenario. So typically the counterfactual, the additionality items, you will not find in our future assessment modules or in the current assessment section of the workflows, just because that's not the specific level at which we're operating and the specific audience that we're dealing with. But you will certainly find the who, the what, because we're specifying these impact topics, because we're looking at client types. So the who's and the what's and the how much, that you will find very much included inside the methodology.
Perfect. Thanks for again the explanation. I think well, if there are any more questions regarding that, let's say relationship, please drop them in the chat. I'm following with Shainul question that reads: does Duke University's impact measurement and management course follow the same procedures? I'm not aware of the course, so I don't know, Karine, if you are.
I'm afraid I would not be able to give a definitive answer on that either at that point, but we can certainly look into it. Apologies. Perfect,
no worries. We'll follow up on that. And regarding the current, let's say, standards and frameworks, latest developments, I would like to know whether you think that is this tool going to provide inputs at some point to the upcoming ISSB standard, for example, regarding the, let's say, holistic impact approach?
We certainly hope so, Florencia. There's in the general requirements draft, there is obviously a key aspect, which is to determine what are the topics that will be disclosed. So it's not preempted. There is no fixed set of disclosures on set topics, but there is a requirement to look for those topics and to understand what they are. And the word identification actually shows there. What is not currently there is an awful lot of guidance in terms of what that identification process might look like. There's a delimitation of what might and might not be material, but that's again a different notion to how do you proceed with the actual process. So I think some of our thinking is that this identification step in particular in the methodology may inform a little bit more guidance in this respect, but to see what exactly can be done, I think just to call out a couple of things. One, that there's been a UN joint response to the exposure drafts. That's available on different UN websites, including the Unep-Fi one. Unep-Fi will put out a detailed response consultation, speaking a lot about identification later this month. And finally, there is a stakeholder consultative committee that has been set up to the ISSB, and the UN is part of that consultative committee. So we expect that this will provide some opportunities to also inform the processes going forward.
Thank you. And thank you, Karine. And well, regarding the pathway ahead or the way ahead, are you planning to replicate the process that has been developed for the banking tool to the other, let's say, sector tools, the other sector tools, or are you planning to have like a modular format for them?
So short answer is yes. Florentia, would it be helpful at all to put the slides back up and give you a quick insight into the 3 other tools, like literally to point out, you know, the difference in construction?
Sure.
Maybe also to just give you some pointers of next steps. So do you want to speak to the other ones, or should I?
Yeah, sure, as you prefer. I can go on if you want.
Okay, fine. Oh, there's also some background noise on my side, so maybe that's actually a better idea.
Okay, so I think we have a slides on the investment portfolio impact analysis tool, where what we would like here is to literally explain which are the different steps of the process for the investment portfolio. And as you will see, it's very similar because the methodology is the same as the banking one, but what we'll be like going into more detail is the specificity of the investment portfolio. So the analysis is structured in 3 main steps. There is a scoping phase first, where like the scope of the analysis is defined, and then identification, which is the moment where all the information concerning investment portfolios are provided, and then again, the main information on the context also is provided, and as a consequence, you will be able to see the main data visualization. And finally, the assessment phase, where you review the actual performance and practice vis-a-vis the identified most significant impact. So here, which are the main difference? The main difference is that, given that we are talking about investment portfolios, first of all, the tool itself is structured by activity type, and these activity types are organized by degree of leverage. So based on the different degree of decision-making power. So we have the management of own assets, of clients' assets with discretionary power, and then with advisory powers, and finally we have training and execution. This is the first element. The second one is that with regard to investment portfolios, the key drivers of impact are, on one hand, the type, the asset classes, and within each asset class, the different asset types. So these are the 2 elements that we are taking into account. And we are using the PRI classification for the asset classes. And the main one that we have included are, for example, fixed income. And I think there is there are also some categorization in there, but we have real estate, commodities, and so on. So all this information is included. So what you will see is that the main impacts association that are visualized in the profile, which is the same terminology that we are using also in the banking tool, are driven precisely by this. And in addition to that, another key driver that we are considering is the actual like the investment strategy, let's say, that it's behind. So this is the other key driver that we are considering here. In the case of real estate, and I can quickly go to that in the next slides, also what we are looking here, it's like not just one level. So as you can see, the investment tool and the banking tool, they are looking at the top-down, it's a top-down approach because we are looking at portfolios. In the case of the corporate tool, for example, we are looking at one specific corporate, so it's a bottom-up approach. The peculiarity of the real estate tool is that we're looking at both sides. So on one hand, you can look at one specific real estate assets. On the other hand, we are looking, we can also look at portfolios and funds. So this is the main characteristics. With regard to real estate, key impact drivers are also, like, in addition to the others, also the so first of all, this is organized by types of real estate. There is a more granular focus on location. So location is considered to be one of the driver, but we also have the types, obviously, of real estate assets, and we also have, for example, the status of the assets as well. So these are the key elements in here. And finally, we have the corporate tool. As you can see, like here, the chart is slightly different, but the logic is still the same. We have an impact identification phase and assessment phase. Here, given that we're looking at one specific corporate, one specific company, the main steps of the analysis would be, first of all, to understand what is the actual company cartography. So what is the type and the size of the bank, and like what is the business sector like of the company, and then like the other key element again is the location, so where the company is operating. And here we are differentiating between countries of production, sourcing, and sales. So this is something that it's a bit more specific, let's say, in the case of the corporate analysis. And like logic is still the same. So at the end of this data collection, the company can actually see what is their impact profile, and based on that, they can actually move to the assessment to understand a little bit more what is their current performance, and so which are the specific actions that they can set. Final point here is that the corporate tool can really be used by either the corporate itself for self assessment, let's say, or by financial institutions as a way to know the clients, and based on understanding of their impact status, use that as a basis for the engagement with the client itself. So I hope that was helpful in terms of high-level overview of the other tools as well. And also to Florenzia question, yes, the idea is to move to a modular format also for these other tools. So right now, as I briefly mentioned before, we have just one Excel file for each of these tools, but we'll be moving to a modular format with this as well. First one will be the corporate tool, so next year, and then after that we'll be also working on the others as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Constanza. That was really useful. Here are the links of the tools, which are open and freely available for you to access. And I am really conscious of the time, but I do want to take the opportunity that Constanza, you're here and you're delivering the workshops of these tools. And I'd like to know, like, whether you kind of keep track of the places where, for example, the financial institutions that are using this approach are located. I know these are global principles and global approaches, but do you somehow kind of track let's say the regional application of these tools?
So yes, as you see, so the workshops that we deliver, given that those are for our membership, and our membership is really based in all regions of the world, so we can say that the tool is actually implemented in all the regions. And what we do obviously is that like the workshop that we deliver are very often like focus on one specific region, because we know that there are specific needs to address in each region differently from the others. So obviously some are more advanced than others, and so this is a reality. But in terms of the actual usage and implementation, absolutely, like all the regions are actually implementing the tool, like obviously in different ways and with different degree of advancement, let's say, but yeah, we can say that it's used across the countries. Yeah.
Thank you, Constanza. Well, given that we're on time, I want to thank very much to these excellent panelists, and thanks for the team at FC4S who enabled this webinar to happen. Thank you all for being here today. We hope this webinar has been informative for you, and we invite you to share this knowledge and tools with your colleagues and ecosystem. We hope to see you again in the next edition of this series of webinars, and you can find more information about both the upcoming ones and the past ones in our webpage, www.fc4s.org. We will follow up by email and send the slides. Thank you very much once again to everyone. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.